Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Live from the Blue Seats. It's producer JL coming at you today with a throbbing headache, but a really good state of mind because the Mets won and it's opening day in Major League Baseball. But that's not what this podcast is about. I am here with the man, the maestro himself, a man who had to spend a whole day with me earlier this week, Mr. David. Mr. David, how are you today?
Well, I lived to tell the tale. No, seriously, I had a blast on Monday. I'm glad you were able to join us for the Play Like a Pro event and then watch whatever the hell the Rangers gave us that night. That was just brutal.
Well, Connor Sheary knew that you were in the audience and decided to score a goal for your sake and for the sake of
Yes, you
candidates
did.
online. But yes, if Dave and I did spend, I guess we'll jump right into it. Dave and I did spend a whole day together. I was invited to accompany Dave for the Play Like a Pro charity hockey game. And I guess I'll pitch it over right over to Dave to get touch more of the details on what happened, and then I'll give my experience about the day because it was obviously just incredibly fantastic and just great work done by everyone involved. So go ahead, Dave.
Yep. So, a Cliff Notes version, if you will, and I honestly don't know if Cliff Notes still exist, but the Cliff Notes version is for I think this is the 12th annual Play Like a Pro game, Play Like a Pro game for neuroblastoma research. Neuroblastoma is a form of childhood cancer that develops in children usually between ages 2 and 5, and it's basically a nerve cell that hyperactive nerve cells that develop into a tumor. And Band of Parents is an organization formed by parents that have been impacted by this brutal type of cancer. And over the last, I, th- I think it's 12 years of the game, and they obviously were around before then. They've been able to raise millions of dollars for neuroblastoma research. This year, Play Like a Pro game raised $350,000. And in partnership with Memorial Sloan Kettering, this money has gone directly to finding cures. And right now, there is a vaccine out there, actually, that is administered to children that have been diagnosed with the disease, and it gives them a 50% chance of survival, which is significantly better than the 4% chance that they had before all of this was available. And it's just one of those things that when Carly reached out to see if we wanted to participate, it was a no-brainer. And it's something that we could use our reach for as part of Live from the Blue Seats and Blue Seat Blogs to hopefully get the word out and garner some donations. And to those that did donate, thank you so much. Know that you truly made a difference. And for JL and I, the experience is very, very different from what you'd expect. We don't play in the game, obviously, but we cover it from the blog standpoint. You saw the posts regarding donations. You saw the little blurbs in each post leading up to the game, and then you saw the summary posted yesterday about it. Basically, we arrived, the games started right after the morning skates for both teams. We went through the bowels of MSG and came out at ice level, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And we took some pictures there. We watched both games. There's a quote unquote slow game and a fast game. A slow game is more for, some of the older folks that are more my age. And the fast game is for those that are a step up in their skill level. And basically what we do is we watch the games, we note who's playing well, we pick an MVP, the Eric Alper MVP award. Eric is another person impacted by this disease, and the trophy is named after him in his memory. And basically this year, we had two goalies as our MVPs in this
First.
quote unquote slow game. It was the first time we actually had goalies that were MVPs.
Right.
In the first game, it was a 3-3 tie after the first period, and it really should have been 10-3, at least 10-3. But the goalie, Mark Solomon, actually was just phenomenal in net. And then the second game, the faster game, Team UBS won 3-1, mostly behind their goalie, Nate Reed, who we found out later played for Yale University in college. So that might be why he was so good.
He's a ringer.
A little leg up. And after both games are played, we finish at around 3:30, 4 o'clock. We go right to an event at Versa Lounge where we do the awards presentation. And then we are in a skybox for the game itself. And that's where more fundraising is done via 50/50 raffle. And something new this year, which hit near and dear to me since my wife is a nurse. They had nurses from MSK in the box with us, and one of the original recipients of the vaccine that I mentioned before gave each of the nurses flowers as a thank you. And it was just very well done. The whole thing, it's supported by the Rangers and Garden of Dreams. It's just such a great event for an amazing cause. And again, thank you to everybody that donated on behalf of the site. Thank you to anybody who has heard of this before and donated and or participated. It was just absolutely amazing. And this was our third year covering it. So looking forward to doing it again for however long this needs to be done until we can find a true cure and a true 100% effective vaccine. Again, thank you guys so much for everything. Thank you to Band of Parents for having us again for a third year. It's nice to have something like this where we feel we can give back a little bit and where we can donate to an amazing cause. I have two girls. I don't know what I'd do if something like this ever impacted us. So this does hit a lot closer to home now.
Right. I definitely agree with you on a lot of what you said, but my overall first of all, I have to thank Mark and the rest of his crew for just organizing these games and this foundation to begin with. I also have to thank you, Dave, for inviting me because I didn't know what to expect. I know this is something you and Carly do, and I know even though you invited me, I felt a little. I guess at the start I felt a little, I guess, out of place because I'm kind of relatively new to this. But I'm glad you invited me because it opened my eyes to something that I wasn't really not too keen about. Not something that I was too aware about, in terms of neuroblastoma. I've heard of it before, but I wasn't too caught up on, I guess, what a lot of the details were in the sense of what it could be, and getting to the garden and being around the players and talking to Mark and just kind of slowly throughout the day beginning to understand what this was about and what the people were doing to fight this thing, it really began to hit home a little bit more for me. um, Even though it's not childhood cancer, I have had family members and currently still do have family members affected by cancer. So I understand the impact of what a disease can do to a family and how it could really, cause people to feel certain types of way, especially even if it's a child. And hearing, the story of Talia Castellano and seeing some of the other patients that were there that they talk about giving the vaccine and what they went through, and just kind of listening to the stories and, kind of hearing what people are talking about. It got me a bit emotional, I'm not going to lie. But what really kind of put it all together was the fact that you could sense there was no sort of ego in the air. Everybody knew, just kind of being around everybody and also looking at how they play the games, is that there wasn't this sort of I'm going to do this for me kind of thing that you would find in other places. No, everyone seemed to be of right sound mind. They all knew what they were there for. They were there for a common goal, and everybody was humble. Everybody was so kind and nice to not only myself, but just everybody just seemed to be very cordial and friendly with each other because they knew that they're doing this for a common cause, and that's for neuroblastoma research. And like Dave said, we were in the annals of MSG. I know that before they used to send you somewhere else, but now they had us in a different spot. We were able to walk through the lower bowl of MSG, which was really nice to see. To get, I've never really been that close to the glass at MSG, let alone that close to the ice at MSG. I could only really dream of ever being that close to the ice, and I was able to do that. And then obviously, like Dave said, we watched the games, and it was such a treat just to see people out there just playing for a good cause, and everyone seemed to have fun. They were enjoying themselves. Yeah, even in the second game, in the fast game, everybody got a little chippy, but that just comes with the nature of competing. But everybody was in good spirits, and everybody seemed to be, sort of together, trying to raise funds for this. And I was watching the video and it was choking me up, the multiple videos they showed, but the one that they showed about, the certain kids getting certain treatments and whatever. You could tell, you could ask Dave, I'm like moving my glasses and I'm tearing up because it was just so emotional, because you just don't want to ever see stuff like that happen to children of all people. Though that's a protected class. We have to take care of our children. And it's nice to see that even though that this terrible diseases out there, that there are groups of people who are really willing and going out of their way to make this a thing. And it was great to chat with everybody at Versa to select the winners. I had a great time with Dave, trying to figure out who's who and whatnot. I was picking up things that he didn't see. He was picking up things that I didn't see. And it was just a really nice thing to do for those who are participating. And it was really cool to be up there while Mark handed out the trophy to the winners. That night. And then, obviously the Ranger game, whatever that was on the ice for the Rangers, didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Granted, it was Mika's 1000th game. It was nice to at least be there for that. But just being in the suite with everybody and seeing how they were celebrating the nurses and how they were, really appreciating the work that goes into these types of things was something that I will really cherish and really appreciate. I have a lot of family members who work in the medical field, and I understand what they go through on certain days with this types of things. So thank you to Dave for inviting me. And thank you to Mark and the rest of the crew from Band of Parents and the Play Like a Pro game. I had a blast. That's probably one of the best Mondays I've ever had. And it's a good cause. And again, thank you to those who donated, and we hope that you can continue to donate when it comes around next year, and keep giving them the support. It's definitely something that, this is a good thing, and we just have to keep on it. So there's that. So that was just my experience on that. So it was fun. I really did. And like I said earlier in the intro, Dave had to spend a whole day with me. So the fact that he made it out alive, I think, and I'll say this before we start talking about Rangers, and he can probably add his thing. I will say, I didn't know how to react once I met up with him, but probably after like an hour, I think we kind of got each other. So it didn't seem like I had to impress the guy too much. So
listen, you're ruining my
fun.
rep, man. I'm supposed to be this like pain in the ass, argumentative blogger, and you're making me look like an actual human being, and you're killing my rep.
Yeah, but if you stand next to me, which you were harping about the whole time about, oh, you're taller than me.
You're tall. I don't understand how I'm the short guy of everybody on this site. Like, I was standing next to Tyler and Rob at a game once, and they made me look like I was 4'3". At least you only had 1 or 2 inches on me, and I'm like, how am I the short one? I'm 5'11".
You're not that short, Dave. Come on, you're average.
But you guys make me look short. There's a difference. You made me look like Matt Zuccarello out there.
But well, he's a good hockey player. But if you're
I'm not a good hockey player.
If you're trying to be this argumentative blogger, you can't really throw out your Napoleon complex next to me. Okay,
it's not a Napoleon complex. It's just one of those like, really, I'm 5'11" and I'm the short one. I've never been the short one.
Well,
it's new world. It is uncharted waters for me.
That's what happens when, unfortunately Carly couldn't make it, and that's what happens when you invite me.
Yeah, Carly, you got to come back. At least I'm taller than you.
So, well, in the near future, if you guys ever see Dave and myself in person somehow, and you decide to approach us, just kind of give him some props. I have a lot going for me being tall. It doesn't really work for me in other fields, but just the confidence thing is okay. But anyways, yeah, so it was a great Monday all around. And again, like I said, I thank Dave for inviting me, and Mark, and the rest of the Play Like a Pro and Band of Parents crew. Speaking of the Rangers, by the way, so we got to witness a really crappy game Monday night, but I guess in watching that crappy game, people tend to talk about draft position and draft picks and all that. So I know you were talking to me about this before, but I guess you kind of want to let it out. You seem to be frustrated by people who are kind of misunderstanding what the whole thing is in regards to the draft and how it goes. So kind of just let it out and
It's not frustration. It's just I feel like I'm repeating myself, and like it's like talking to my 2 year old. I have to constantly say, to my 2 year old, listen, don't put the fork in the outlet. It's not a good idea. Like if you want to do it, fine, but you're not gonna like what happens. Obviously, she's not putting a fork in an outlet, guys. Don't take this seriously. I'm just
well, you have to
having
be
a little bit
careful
of
with that.
fun. Well, no, because the way the world is now, someone's gonna call CPS on me because this
Oh,
kid's putting a fork in an outlet. No, she's not putting a fork in an outlet, you moron. But like, I have to say 4, 5, 6 times, "Hey, it's time for bed. Hey, it's time for bed. Let's go brush our teeth. Well, can I change your diaper?" Things like that. And it's the same thing with the draft. It's a draft lottery. It is not the NFL. It is a lottery, which means no matter what, the Rangers are not going to have a guaranteed top 2 pick. Even if they finish dead last, they are not guaranteed a top 2 pick. They can only drop 2 spots max, but where they are right now, 31st in the NHL, they have a 13.5% chance of getting the top pick, winning the lottery, getting the top pick. They have roughly a 36.5% chance of retaining the second overall pick. Everything else is dropping to 3 or dropping to 4. So it's a 50-50 shot that they have a top 2 pick and getting either Stenberg or McKenna. But on the bright side, if they don't get Stenberg or McKenna, there's still Chase Reed. There's still a bunch of other solid high-end guys in the top 5 to 7 range. Now, the concern for a lot of people is the Rangers somehow finish, I don't know, fourth with the 4th or the 5th worst record, and then they wind up picking 6th or 7th. That puts them in Caleb Malhotra or Tynan Lawrence territory, which is they're the top 2 centers available. So I don't think it's a huge, huge thing if the Rangers wind up picking 6 or 7. I would prefer they get the high-end ceiling in McKenna or Stenberg at 1, 2. But as long as they don't finish outside of the top 7, I think they'll be fine. But I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page here, that it's a lottery for a reason. I think only baseball and football are straight up, you
yes.
finish last, you get the first pick.
Yeah.
Basketball has a lottery for this as well, and I think the Knicks are the reason why, actually. Patrick
Well,
Ewing.
well, it was the frozen envelope, as they called it. But yeah, no, I'm not trying to dunk on anybody, and we'll get to your questions in a bit because we know you submitted some, guys. Thank you again for that. But I think what I think this is uncharted territory for a lot of Ranger fans because yeah, the first time it happened, it was sort of unorthodox, with the lockout, not the lockout, the COVID pandemic and the way that was instituted with Carolina bouncing the Rangers out in the first round. Actually, they were the first team eliminated in that play-in game or the play-in round. So I think many of us Ranger fans have not actually gone through a season where the team was this bad and was this close to having these kind of odds for a number 1 to 4 pick. Because at least in that 2019 season, when they were able to get Lafreniere, that year, and yeah, granted, it happened a little bit with Kako the year before that, but that was for the number 2 pick, right? But I guess you could say this is somewhat of a foreign concept because, it has never really been this bad. at least in terms of the team's performance and chances. So, when they got Kako at number 2, they were a little bit better. They weren't as down. So kind of the expectations were like kind of towards the end of the season, it's like, oh, well, they might get 1 or 2. And it was between the Devils and the Rangers. It was pretty much set in stone that they would get either at that point. But this is a bit different because it seems a bit more dire, at least on the team performance, and it's heightened all of our senses. So, it's interesting because if anyone watches hockey, I mean, again, I'm not trying to dunk on anybody, but how do you not know it's not a lottery system? I mean, the biggest example I can give of that is when Buffalo was quote unquote, I guess, tanking. I wouldn't say actually trying to tank, but Buffalo was the worst team in the league in 2015, and they got second overall. Edmonton beat them out in terms of percentage for McDavid. And everybody at the time thought because Buffalo was worse than Edmonton that Buffalo was going to get that first pick and get McDavid, but it went complete 180. So that's why, I would figure people would have understand that, but I guess it's, again, no slight to anybody, but I guess some people just don't really know the rules on that. But that's interesting to figure out that there's still some sort of a thing about that. Anyways, I wanted to talk about JT Miller real quick. We don't have to spend too much time on this, but when we were at the game Monday, I kind of pointed out to you because I'd seen this all season, because I go to way more games than anyone really should. But I guess Dave just kind of touched on this real quick. I know you wrote a piece about it, but JT Miller is clearly compromised. Like there is legitimately something physically wrong with that man because he does not look as engaged physically as he would have been the season prior. And I think you began to notice that once you were actually seeing him in person.
Yeah, there's a lot that you miss from TV angles or TV cameras, and that's mostly because the TV camera's following the play, and when JT Miller is not in the play, which is quite often, you don't really see what's going on. He just couldn't move. Like he looked like me after the first time I moved into this house and we got like I think we got like 16 inches of snow within in that first winter the first time. My wife was pregnant. So it was just me out there shoveling and I couldn't move for like 3 days after. Shoveling the wet heavy snow as everybody can relate sucks.
Yes.
And he looked like me out there. So, and that's not a compliment. He is very clearly hurt. And when I wrote that, there was a comment about why the Rangers would continually play somebody who is known to be hurt. And I don't know how to put this into words other than gesturing my hands wildly and saying, "What the hell have you been watching for the last 20 years?" Because this is not new for the Rangers. They do this all the time. Chris Kreider was hurt most of last season. Jacob Trouba was playing on a broken ankle during the playoffs. Adam Fox was playing on whatever the hell happened to his knee in the 24 playoffs. Just the Rangers don't know how to manage injuries, and they never have. But this is also on players. Miller in particular, we know he's been compromised all year because he got hurt in preseason and he still played through whatever just so he can make the Olympic roster. So this is not just a Rangers thing. This is hockey players. It's just the guy is hurt. And at least to me, that gives me a little bit of hope for next year that he's going to take what essentially is May, June, July, August, and half of April. So that's 4.5 months to heal. I'm hopeful that he can come back and maybe not be a 100-point player, but if he can be a 70-point player and the Rangers get, say, a high-end draft pick, let's say they win, they get Gavin McKenna, they put him on his wing, they figure out how to trade Trocheck for a viable NHL body or Schneider for a faster forward. Schneider, I think, is the better trade person. Oh my God, I just lost my words. Is the better candidate to receive that kind of player back in a trade. I keep going after San Jose in that regard, but let's say San Jose offers Eklund for Schneider and something. You put Miller, Eklund, and McKenna or Stenberg on a line. Maybe that gets Miller back to a 70-point season. Take him off of power play 1, and now you have 2 legitimate power play units. That gives me hope that he's hurt and he can rebound next year. Now, if he can't rebound next year and we know it's a decline, you buy him out and call it a day. That trade sucked for both teams. I've never seen that before. I've never seen a trade be so bad for both teams in my life. The best players in the trades are Victor Mancini and Jackson Dorrington. Seriously.
No, it's true.
I feel so bad for Philip Hedl. He can't stay healthy at all. And JT Miller apparently is following suit. At least for him, it's not head injuries, which I feel really bad for Hedl.
Yeah.
But it's just how in the world did a blockbuster trade like that wind up going so poorly for both teams? I have never seen a trade just be that bad for both teams, ever.
Well,
that's it.
Yeah, if I remember correctly too, I think Jeff Marek and I want to say Greg Wyshynski or one of the two, maybe one of those two, or they basically alluded to that the fact that the Miller trade hasn't gone as well, which is weird because when Miller got traded here last season, he was actually producing, which is why I stand by my claim. I've been saying it all year. If you listen to this podcast, you know exactly what I'm saying. Is I've stood by that all year, basically saying that he is injured because he came in guns blazing last season on a crappier team. Yes, last season's team was worse than this season's team. I can say that for sure because there was more to it than just the on ice stuff. But he was more engaged. He was a lot more physical. He was getting into the corners. He was taking better shots. And clearly, with the lower body injury he sustained in the preseason, it has been way more than everybody is letting on. Again, you alluded to that the Rangers have been just terrible with managing injuries. And then you also mentioned, too, that it's the player's fault. Trouba had this same problem. I don't understand. I forgot who said this. I don't know if this was something with either I heard in conversation or somebody mentioned in the chat. But, I mean, it's been a common sentiment for some time now that Ranger captains, outside of maybe McDonough, seem to want to play through their injuries. And I get it to a degree. You want to keep your spot. You want to be the big captain for the team and set an example. But at the same time, you're hurting the team. We could say that ad nauseum. These guys are never going to really get it. But, you look at Jacob Trouba playing with the busted leg or with the busted wrist. Remember, there was a picture of when they were doing the intros where they walk into the stadium and he has the sling on his wrist. Obviously, if you're a hockey player, you need your wrist to ring the puck around the boards, and Trouba was having an issue with that. And then there was the issue with his leg or his, knee that, he, Zach Jones filled in and they were playing well. He comes back and it seems to be a bit of a step back. So there was that. So I don't understand why they feel the need to do that, but again, fingers crossed that these guys can heal up throughout the summer. Whatever Miller's issue is, I hope that he can come back with some renewed sense of, duty as the captain, and hopefully with, a younger guy. I would love to see him on a line of him, let's say McKenna or Stenberg, and I don't know, Cooley or who else could you throw in there? A guy they sign in the offseason, and we'll touch on that once we get to the questions. So I just wanted to mention that because I still feel the need to make that point that JT Miller is playing hurt and it's bad. Anyways, so now let's go to the questions. Dude, we have any on Blue Sky? Don't think we
I did not see any on Blue Sky. Seems a lot of fans are as checked out as some of the Rangers seem like they are.
Well, that's perfectly fine because
Yeah,
he's very
I'll allow
clear.
it.
We're only less than a month away from the season ending and going into the playoffs. So I know I'll say this. It's been very hard. I understand that. It's been a very difficult time to push through, and especially if you like watching multiple sports, like myself watching baseball, there's this new renewed sense of energy coming in with the baseball season, and the Rangers have just kind of been lackluster. So it's hard to get into it. I understand it, but that's what we're here for. We're here to compartmentalize all this for you so that your life will be a little bit easier. And meanwhile, Dave and I are catching tantrums and throwing stuff at the wall. Anyways, so let's get to the questions. We've got some on the website here, so thank you for that. This first question comes from, and again, this is my favorite one, and this is not me. I am going to
Sure, it's not. Sure, it's
I
not.
I do not have an account to log in and comment. This is the producer JL praise account. Okay. I really do want to know who this is because I thank you for that.
They
Uh,
only have 4 or 5 comments, so I'm going digging because
it's
this
not.
is very clearly a burner account.
You can do an IP search. It's not me. Um, so so it's two questions into one. Then producer JL praise account first asks if Jason Robertson hits free agency, and Dallas has declined to match his projected contract, 11.9 mil AAV per evolving hockey, would cost 4 first-round picks. Would you be willing to pay that kind of compensation given the Rangers' recent history with the first-round picks? And they say I'd give up a dozen. Your thoughts?
This is a loaded question because it's not a yes or a no. It's a what draft position do the Rangers so first things first, the draft picks would start with 2027. Just so we're all on the same page, it doesn't include the 2026 first round pick. So if the Rangers wind up with the top 2 pick this year and they trade Trocheck for good value and they trade Schneider for good value, they have good enough depth and they have high end top line, third line, fourth line, but they're missing something or high end second, third, fourth lines, and they're missing that game breaker in the top line, then yes, I go for it. And I
But
sacrifice those 4 first round picks. But let's say the Rangers finish third, wind up fifth. They get Tynan Lawrence or Caleb Malhotra, and neither one of them are really, come out of the draft playing in the NHL right away kind of guys, unlike McKenna and Stenberg seem like they're more NHL ready. If the Rangers say have to settle for futures for Trocheck, or they don't get the return that we're hoping for Schneider, and nobody really knows what Schneider's trade value is right now, then I wouldn't do it because at that point the picks are worth more. It's really what is the bigger picture. What else worked for the Rangers before they go and offer sheet Robertson? Because offer sheets come last.
mm-hmm.
So they can wait before they have to make that decision.
Yeah,
I would not give up this year's first round pick for him.
no. I was actually going to ask that. I forget the sequence of events, whether or not the offer sheets are coming after the draft. I'm assuming they do. So that's a good point, though, because that kind of positions the Rangers into a sort of like a what could they possibly do in that regard. So, but again, if that were me and the Rangers are able to get that game breaker young kid, whether it's McKenna or Stenberg, I would 100% do it too, because that means you just basically load it up. And now with the resurgence of Lafreniere, not Trocheck, Lafreniere,
Zibanejad.
Zibanejad. Yeah, I was at City Field all day. I apologize, my brain's not working. Lafreniere, I'm too
Your
busy.
brain technically has never worked.
That is true. That is correct. Yes, David. Thank you for reminding me of the painfully obvious. Um, the emergence of Perot, Lafreniere, and Zibanejad, I think that gives the rain. Which honestly, if you really think about it, that kind of really accelerates things to a degree because that kind of reverses something that people thought wasn't working with the team. Because who knew putting Lafreniere in the driver's seat actually would turn out to be what was the antidote to what was the problem. Now, Kako's a different story, of course, because he's been given the keys and Seattle and is still not produced. But with Lafreniere, you knew the skill was there, and I could see why the Rangers did not want to trade him, of course. And I was still very hesitant to trade him unless the deal was a can't miss kind of trade. But with that actually working out and them actually having really strong chemistry with the same coach that's going to be here next season, that's a really encouraging sign. And believe it or not, and I know Dave and I had this discussion at the game on that Monday, but there is a way out of all this where they can still be reasonably decent next year. But it all depends if a lot of the dominoes fall down, and this is actually part of that. Now, the second part of producer JL Praise Account's question is, which jersey should I get? Laba, Cooley, or Perot? Then they say, or perhaps JT Miller, question mark? Just kidding. I already have plenty of toilet paper.
So, okay. I don't know if I'm the appropriate person to answer this question because every time I buy a player jersey, that player gets traded. So I am also considering crowdsourcing a JT Miller jersey purchase for myself so that he does get traded. And I know Jess will eventually be listening to this. Jess, you're not allowed to stab me if I buy a JT Miller jersey. If anything, you should be contributing part of it because you know the curse. So
Yes.
if it's me personally, I think Perot is the safest Ranger for the long term.
Mm-hmm.
I like all three, but I think Perot's the safest bet because unless Cooley starts producing more, he's eventually going to outstrip his production in terms of contract. And just like Ryan Lindgren, you have to separate the love of the player for the value of the player. And I think at some point, unless Cooley really starts getting more into the 25, 30 goal range, he's going to wind up at a $7 million contract for 20 goals, 40 points. And that's just not good spending. That's not good bang for your buck.
Yeah.
So I think Perot's your safest bet.
So as Dave found out on Monday, I actually do own a Gabe Perot jersey. I got it for Christmas. A couple people comment to me about it. And I also pointed out to some people, I had just remembered this too, to some people at the Play Like a Pro awards when we were chatting, Dave and I. The guys were from Montreal, and I just remembered that I was wearing the jersey of a guy who played for the Canadiens, or the father of a guy who played for the Canadiens, and I thought that was pretty cool. As the jersey guy here, right? I'm actually looking at it right now. I actually own a JT Miller jersey. I bought it probably the week that he got traded. I knew he was wearing the number 8, so I bought it because 8's my favorite number because my birthday is on April 8th. So, and I do own a Jacob Trouba jersey with that number as well. But if you want a safe bet, you can do what I did and get a Gabe Perot jersey. Also, you know what would be another safe bet if you're trying to get a jersey? Get a Mika Zibanejad. He's had a resurgence this year in terms of not only his perception in this team's history, but he's just been really damn good. And if he's going to keep producing like this, he's going to be here for at least the next 2 years. So it wouldn't be too much of a waste. And you'd be getting the jersey of a guy who's 4th in the franchise in goals. So it wouldn't be much of a wash. But if you want to go safe, Perot or Zibanejad would be a good option. You could get Adam Fox if you wanted to, regardless of whether he gets traded or not. But yeah, if you really want a safe bet, Perot or Zibanejad. I highly doubt Mika's getting traded this offseason, so that would be a good thing to go get. So thank you, Producer JL Praise Account, and I will stress this again, that is not me. So thank you for your genuine enthusiasm for me, and I'm not being sarcastic. This next question comes from No Cup. Thank you for the reminder of that. And No Cup says, do you realize that since Carrick was given away, I wouldn't say that, to Buffalo, the Rangers collectively as a team have had 0 fighting majors. What a bunch of tough guys we have on this team. They are good at turning the other cheek. Drury's team's toughness has really come through. Now I'm waiting for someone to comment, team toughness has nothing to do with fighting. And I will say, let me tell another story. Harder to play against. Yeah, I'm sure there is no one on this team that anyone in the league knows they have to keep their head up for when he is on the ice. There is no one on this team that has come close to earning that kind of respect throughout the league. Let me touch on this real quick. I don't really have much to say, but I understand where you're coming from with that. Um, I'm I'm a big proponent of fighting. I am. I'm a really big proponent of fighting. But just because they're not fighting doesn't mean that they're not tough. Some guys just don't want to fight. There's not many guys on this team who would actually want to get into a fight. I understand where you're coming from with that. But if you watch the way that the team, like I'll give you an example against Toronto. Right before the end of the game, Gabe Perreault gets cross-checked into the corner for towards the end of the period. Half the team came in and mobbed the guys around Perreault and tried to get
Led by JT Miller, by the way.
Led by JT Miller. That's toughness. That is because they're defending each other. There was another instance, I think, when this was at the Garden. I forget what team it was against. Someone ran. I don't know. Was it at the Garden? I can't remember. Someone ran Igor, and I think Gavrikov came in. I think it took a penalty too doing this, but he basically came in and assaulted the guy who went after Igor. And then they asked him after the game, "Oh, why'd you do that?" And he said to the press, "No one touches my goalie." And this season in particular, they've done a better job at that than they did last season. So, obviously Rempe being hurt doesn't help the whole fighting thing. But this team this year has been significantly better, at least for playing for each other to a degree. This team is just constructed poorly. That's why everything falls apart. But they're still like a team, and they're still pushing back against those who kind of mess with them a little bit. Fighting is not part of it all the time. Sometimes you have to just get into scrums and do that. You know, so are they going to have somebody on the team like a Truba who's going to just throw violent on ice hits? Maybe they bring that guy in at some point in the offseason. I don't know. But to say that there is no toughness, as much as I want to rail on the Rangers and, they rightly deserve it, that's one of the things that I can say has not been an issue with them so far. A lot of it comes from not only defending their teammate, but also just the frustration for the season. And you know what? Give JT Miller credit where credit is due. He's definitely stepped up in that regard in defending his team. I know people want to try and maybe question the fact that he's a questionable captain, but at the end of the day, you can see he actually gives a damn, regardless of the stupid quotes that he says sometimes. The guy clearly cares. But, when something just constantly defeats you after a while, you're going to be a bit, defeated at times. But that's just my take on that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I loved Sam Carrick. The Rangers really had to just capitalize on trade value at that point, especially because he was 34 years old and you never really knew when the bottom was going to fall out. So I think using fighting to determine toughness is a flawed argument. And I get that we're all frustrated with this team. So vent away. I'm not going to tell you how to fan. I just don't agree with the assessment that fighting means toughness. Fighting is on its way out. And the one thing that I do want to point out is I believe fighting still belongs in the game, just not this staged fight bullshit that we're seeing where the Ryan Reeves and Sam Carrick here. I'll just go with guys that were ex-Rangers. Ryan Reeves and Sam Carrick, start of the game, start of the period, drop the gloves. That's staged. I want Vinny Lecavalier versus Jarome Iginla. Game 6 of the Stanley Cup final. Heat of the moment, drop the gloves and go. That's the original how it's supposed to be. All this whole dropping the gloves because a clean hit, that pisses me off. It's a clean hit. Get over it.
Mm-hmm.
So my viewpoint on fighting is a little bit more nuanced. I'm not a ban it. I'm not a keep it. I'm a let's get rid of the staged fight bullshit. Let's get rid of the somebody delivered a clean hit to my teammate, so I'm going to drop the gloves, which means just call the fucking instigator penalty. That's what it's there for.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe give misconducts to the guys who are doing staged fights. And eventually we'll wind up with what the original, the quote unquote purists meant, which is, hey, heat of the moment, you're pissing me off. I'm trying to win a hockey game. It's the playoffs. Captain on captain fight. And yeah, call me a boomer for that kind of a take, but I think that's the point of it. And I think we just answered the next question too.
Yeah. So this is our last question of the podcast. Again, thank you to everyone who sent their questions. And Two Line Passes asks, do you think fighting should be part of the game? And who was your favorite enforcer during the gladiator days of hockey and why? Yeah, I think it should. Statistically speaking, from what I can remember, what I've seen from other reports and all that, I wish I could pull them up right now. So I apologize for the lack of numbers here, but people equate fighting with the head injuries. And yeah, of course, you can definitely get a head injury from fighting because you're, constantly slamming your, your fist in someone's head. And that's prevalent to happen. I won't deny that, of course. I'm not a CTE denier by any means whatsoever, because it is very real and it is a problem, that has afflicted many former athletes in football and in hockey. At the same time, not that I don't want that to sound like I'm advocating for a head disease, but there's a certain thing about fighting that sort of allows for policing of actions in hockey. And you have players like a Radko Gudas, a Nick Cousins, who are running amok in the league, injuring people. Nick Cousins has injured plenty of people. Radko Gudas just ended Austin Matthews' season. So what's the best way to police that sort of thing? Is obviously you want to score more goals than the other team. That's the best way to do it. But you also, have the ability to punch somebody's face in without much repercussion. Hockey is a wonderful sport in the sense that you can only get a small penalty relative to everything else for bashing somebody's head out of anger for a good cause, so to speak. That's not something you can find anywhere else. And if they deserved it, well, you know what? Sometimes in life you kind of need to get beaten a little bit. I don't want that to be taken out of context. But sometimes, there's some people who need to get checked and they gotta get their lesson. I don't know if that's very old school New York, New Jersey of me, but if somebody does something wrong, they have to pay. And if that's one of the reasons why I like Jacob Trouba when he was doing his thing, because he was offering clean hits, but he was making people pay, right? And I know this kind of ties into what I was saying before, that not everything has to that maybe the Rangers find a guy that can do that, but that's not the only thing about toughness. That's part of it, but fighting in that regard, when you can retaliate in that way and be allowed to do it, should 100% be a part of the game. It shouldn't be staged, like Dave said, where you have guys basically saying you want to do it. No, that should kind of the anger should come in the moment, if that makes any sense. Instead of it being staged like it used to be back in the day, where like George Laraque would talk to like Dan LaCouture, all these other people, and they would talk about it and then they would fight. It seemed very planned. It should more be in the spur of the moment kind of thing. Which kind of allows for that natural aggression to come out, adding to the regular flow of a game. My favorite enforcer, I guess, during the gladiator days, there's a few. I mean, Derek Bugard was one that I really liked. He seemed also just like he was a genuine guy. Most of those guys are pretty down to earth people. Brandon Prust, I guess, was a little bit, was someone that I really enjoyed watching as like an enforcer, so to speak, even though you probably see him as more of a grinder than anything. I really like seeing what Sandy McCarthy, even though that was during the dark ages, it was really cool to see him, score goals a little bit, and kind of put his foot down, even though those teams were just absolutely terrible. So that's pretty much all I can think of right now. Obviously Colton Orr was also a pretty good one, to say the least. Has had about 2 career goals with the New York Rangers, which, one was a wraparound. It was pretty cool. So yeah, Jody Shelley, maybe, that's another name too.
This is showing the age gap here, and I know it's only 10 years, but that 10 years does matter because for me, the answer is the one and only Jeff Bookaboom.
Ah.
I mean, for the Rangers, it's Jeff Bookaboom. I was too young to appreciate Bob Probert. I was too young to appreciate who was it on Edmonton? Was it McSorley on Edmonton? No, it wasn't McSorley.
Oh,
Who was
Dave Semenko.
Yeah, thank you. Why am I thinking McSorley? Was that later?
No, McSorley was there too.
Okay.
That was their thing. It was like you had if you messed with Semenko, you could either mess with Semenko or McSorley. I'm not entirely. They had to have overlapped.
Okay. Okay. So I was too young for that though, because I was born in '84. So for me, it was Jeff Bookaboom. Uh, I was again too young for Probert. Ty Domi was just great. I love
Mhm.
Ty Domi.
Yeah,
And Ty Domi had some skill too. He wasn't just a
he did.
puncher. He
No, he
was
really
out there.
did.
Bookaboom had some skill. He was a solid defenseman. Ulf Samuelson
Mhm.
too.
With those
This
humongous
yeah.
pads.
What was that?
Those humongous pads that Samuelson
Oh
had.
yeah.
That's like a truck.
Who else was there? Sandy McCarthy for the Rangers is actually a fun one.
Yeah, I remember.
I remember.
Oh, they also had Dale Purinton at that time too.
Oh God.
Well, he wasn't. He just wasn't a good defenseman though. But he could.
He was horrible. He was horrible.
He could throw him down though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but like now we're getting into the depressing Ranger days. And we're going more recent. Brandon Prust
Mm-hmm.
before he lost his mind. Sean Avery, I wouldn't really count as an enforcer.
No, he
I
was
would
more of
actually Prust wasn't really an enforcer either. He was
He
more of
fought
an
a lot,
agitator
though.
grinder. He fought a lot, but he wasn't the enforcer type. Like there are a lot of fun ones. Nowadays, it's I still love Ryan Reeves. I love the guy. I wish he could have been more effective on the ice for the Rangers.
Would have been perfect.
Oh God, I loved watching him play. He was just not. He was just such a good locker room guy, and I wish he could have stuck with the Rangers and been more effective on the ice. But such is hockey.
Yeah.
There aren't many of those guys around, and not even Reeves, but like there aren't many true enforcers anymore because the game's changed. You have to be able to play the game.
Well,
Like even Rempe fights, but Rempe can play. He's a decent skater. He's got good senses and skills. He's just unfortunately always hurt.
yeah.
And he needs a lot of fine tuning. But like more guys are going to be like Rempe and Carrick than they are going to be a Reeves or a Domi.
Yeah. But that's also showing how the game has changed too, because a guy like a Brandon Prust is one of, I think, at least to me, one of the first players in the more recent years who could do both. Because usually you would have the fourth line guys that weren't really like fighters. Like I think of a guy like James Shepard that comes to mind for some reason. James Shepard is not a guy that I would expect to be this sort of brawler, but the guy was a really good fourth liner. I really liked him a lot as a Ranger on the fourth line too. But he was a very effective, very good defensive forward kind of thing. He was a grinder, get down to the corners. You had a player like Blair Betts, Daryl Powell, guys who could get down and dirty, or like, Jeff Halpern, guys like that. But they couldn't really fight. So it was usually it was always like one or the other. It was like you could fight, but they weren't really that good. But then you started seeing the emergence of a Milan Lucic. You started seeing the emergence of guys like Tom Wilson who could be tough and fight. And I think that really began like with players like Brandon Prust, because you began to see those like hybrid types a bit more, around that time frame. Even though they were always prevalent in more ways than one, some would lean more towards the skill aspect, but they could also fight at the same time. Like Cam Neely was a tough guy, but he leaned more towards skill than anything. Brandon Shanahan was a tough guy, but he was a very skilled player, and they played to that. Those guys were also not afraid to get down into a fight. But in terms of like the strictly bottom six role, that would kind of be that sort of mix. that's like a guy like a Brandon Prust around that time is when you really began to see that. And I think now is sort of becoming more in the sense that now guys are coming in who are either in their late 20s, early 30s, or guys younger who can really do both. So that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong and maybe I'm totally off base, but that's just my observation on that. So thank you for the questions and really appreciate it. Someone mentioned in the comments real quick, someone mentioned Nick Fatillo. That's another good name to mention as well, even though we weren't around for that, but that's definitely a good name to pick. Anyways, so that being said, I think that puts a wrap on this week's podcast. Any final thoughts, Dave, before we sign off for the night?
You know what? I actually don't have any final thoughts, probably because my brain melted today at work. So yeah, I'm good. Just again, thank you to everybody that donated to Band of Parents and the Play Like a Pro charity game. Uh, Again, $350,000 raised in
Amazing.
one event is just it's so it's just it's fucking amazing how people can get together. A little in abundance is a lot, and hopefully next year we can break that. I think
Mm-hmm.
the blog we had a little under 2,000. I have to double check the number, the final number, a little under 2,000 raised. I'd like to double that next year. I want to keep getting up. I want to eventually get to 5 figures raised for this. This is such an important cause. And again, thank you everybody that donated. Thank you to Band of Parents for inviting us. Thank you, Carly, for being the leader on this one, even though you couldn't make it this year. You were the
Mm-hmm.
one that was initially contacted and reached out to me to see if it was something that the blog would be interested in. And one of the most important things we do, it is the most important thing that we do as part of this site, is covering this event. So again, thank you everybody that donated.
He says he doesn't have a final thought and gives a final thought. Well done, Dave. Um, um, sorry, I just had to say that. No, I
You had
echo.
to ruin the moment, didn't you?
No, but I echo the same sentiments. I had a wonderful time. Band of Parents and Play Like a Pro, just wonderful. Thank you to everyone who donated, and thank you to everyone who organized it for, and thank you to you guys for allowing me to, fill in. Not only Carly for allowing me to, fill in, but Dave for inviting me as well. So we definitely hope you can donate more. And yeah, I think that's all I have. So with that being said, we'll have more content for you. We'll have a new episode of Blue Seats After Dark next week. Me and Dave me and Dave made the joke where I was gonna, he says, "Oh, I'm not recording Blue Seats After Dark tonight," and I said, "Well, I was gonna make the joke where I was gonna send him all
Oh
the
crap! I
information."
I have to do that. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I will, for those who I know I haven't recorded Blue Seats After Dark this week for the Patreon subscribers. Obviously, we were at the game Monday, and then just kind of life happened over the last couple of days. I
yeah,
will make it up to you guys next week. I'll figure something out, but I'll make it up to you guys. I promise.
yeah, we are very good at doing what we need to do, and again, Uh, we'll continue to provide you with content, of course, and even after this, abomination of a season that we call the Rangers season ends, we will still be here for you. Anyways, that being said, thank you so much for listening. Subscribe to all of our social channels, follow us on the blog, watch our stuff, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch y'all next week. Let's go Rangers, I think.